Hey, Jason from National Camera Exchange here. In this tutorial, we're going to look at using the local adjustment brush in the develop module. So up on the top here below my histogram, I have all my local adjustments. And similar to some of the other adjustments, when I click on the local brush here, I have this set of options that I can apply to just a small area of the image. So like the different filters, the radial filter and the graduated filter, I can adjust my white balance selectively, my exposure and my contrast, and all these things selectively. I can even sharpen a smaller area of the image, or remove some noise or add some noise to a smaller area of the image. And then down here below that, I'll show you some of the options for changing your brush size, and what feathering and flow kind of do. And then this auto mask option, I'll show you what that does. There. So this is an image here where this is one way. So we showed how to do a graduated filter, but sometimes that graduated filter will affect the trees more than what I want the trees to be affected. And so this is a way to kind of brush in a smaller effect here. So if I select the adjustment brush here, and again, if something is already set in there, so if I'm at, if I'm going to brush in an overexposure of a stop and a half, I can either double click on exposure, or I can hold Alt down and click on the reset word that pops up here. And then now I can make these special adjustments. So my sky here, if I want, let's say I can cool down the temperature in the sky, and I can, maybe drop the exposure a little bit, add a little bit of contrast. And these are things I can change later, so I'm just kind of guessing right now. Maybe we'll take away a little clarity because this is kind of a more out of focus area of the image. And if you look here, you can see the size of my brush that's already selected. If you're using a mouse with a scroll wheel, you can scroll up and down to change the size here. Otherwise, over on the right hand side, you have this size option here, and I can roll this up and down. And then feathering, you can see that area around, so I have an inner circle and an outer circle. The area between those is how far the brush, kind of that soft edge that transitions from an effect to no effect. And then the flow here is how thick you're applying that effect. So if I want to start layering that effect on and kind of building it, I can slowly but surely apply more and more flow. And so you can see here, if I adjust this, I'm going to actually turn off my auto mask for a second. I'm going to apply these changes, and you can see drastically, like my exposure shift is super low, and so my white balance is also shifting my sky. You can see this is also, like if I brush over the trees, I guess that wasn't, you can see how it's affecting, or if I brush over a face here, you can see how that's affecting. So that's not exactly what I want to do. So one thing I can do, I can switch to erase down here where my brush options are, and I can erase that. So you can see I switched to my brush has a minus key on it now, or a minus sign instead of a positive sign. And I can go in and I can actually adjust, erase that. And again, down here I can change all the effects of my eraser. So the size of my eraser very likely isn't as big as the size of my actual application brush. And feather and flow, that might be different as well. So, but here I can go in and I can erase some of that effect. But you can see I'm also starting to erase some of the sky because it's hard to be real precise with this big of a brush. And I could zoom in, use a smaller brush, all that kind of stuff too. So just kind of showing you a general way to do it. But you can see I can erase this all. But I'm actually going to delete that change. So as long as this node is affected. So again, if I let's see here, I click on this and then click on it again. You see how that's not selected there, and I can start a new adjustment. Well, now I've got two separate nodes. Whichever one's selected, if I hit the delete key, it goes away. If I go back over, select this one, I hit the delete key, it goes away. So all those changes are gone. Instead of using it kind of the way I showed you there, I can also go down here to this auto mask option. And what happens is any colors that kind of fall underneath my crosshairs or my plus symbol in the very center of my brush, they're affected by the change. And even though the outer rings of the brush might brush over another color or another, just basically another color, then they won't be affected by this brush. So you can see here the blues are affected by the brush and the white's affected by the brush. And you can see the different shades. I'm running some weird issues artifacting because I'm making drastic changes to part, but some of that isn't necessarily. But here, as you watch, if I go along the trees, you can see the greens are staying the same because the crosshairs haven't touched the greens. So I'm not really affecting those. If I accidentally dip down, now, even though you can see as I go back over that green, I've kind of added the green channel into that. So that's how you use the auto mask feature, and that works really well to try to eliminate some of those changes. Of course, now that I've applied this brush here, you can see if I drop some of that exposure so it's not quite as drastic, and I maybe undo my temperature shift, you can see that change isn't quite as drastic as it was, and it isn't making it look so odd. The other thing, just before we go, the last thing is kind of good to know, is if I hover my key or my cursor over the brush I've selected, it shows you where my effect's taking place. So anything in red is where my effect's taking place. Thanks for watching. For more tutorials, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Let us know in the comments below what other tutorials you'd like to see. Until next time, I'm Jason with National Camera Exchange.